Hey, good morning. God bless you guys. Uh, on my way to work. Well, I'm at work right now. About to go in. I'm a train operator. Work for New York City Transit. Uh, Thinking about David, King David. I'm sure a lot of people heard the story of David and Goliath. You know, little background before that. Saul was the first king of Israel. He was anointed by Samuel through God to be the first king of Israel. The Israelites were calling for a king. So, even though God said he is the king, he was the king, God was the king, but they wanted a human king. So, God granted them what they wanted, and they gave him Saul. And Saul did. He was praying in the beginning. He was good. He was good, but then he lost his ways, and lost his ways with God. So then God said, "I'm going to need somebody else." And David, man after his own, a man after his own heart. Imagine being after God's own heart, touching it, living a life the way of God. So God sent Samuel the prophet to David's house, to David's father's house, and Samuel told his father that God was going to give king through his house, through one of his sons. And he had a few brothers that was born before him, and David bought the first brother, and Samuel said no. The second, the third, a few of them. I believe five, I don't remember exactly. But so that was it, the last brother. And Samuel said to David's father, said, "Do you have one more son?" He said, "Yeah, I have. My youngest, he's with the sheep." David was a shepherd. And he brought him to him, and he was the one. He was the one. So fast forward a little bit to David and Goliath. You know, David was the shepherd. David killed a bear and a lion. A bear and a lion he killed to protect the sheep. And he had that. He had God behind him. He wasn't afraid. He had God behind him. He wasn't. He knew who was behind him. Who was his rock? Who was gonna help protect him? Right? They had Goliath. They had giants in the land at that time, and Saul and his army were getting tormented by Goliath. You know, and they were afraid. They were afraid of Goliath. They were. Why were they afraid? They didn't have. They weren't trusting God. They weren't trusting God. A lot of us do that all the time. I don't. When we don't trust. When we don't trust God, we become afraid. We become fearful, and we start living in our own ways. I'll say my own ways. I should say me. My own ways. My ways don't work. But here comes David. He was bringing a gift to his. He was bringing something to his brothers who were in Saul's army from the father. And Saul knew who David was. David played the harp. So when David played the harp, it calmed Saul down. It gave him a peace. He played it so beautiful that it gave Saul a peace. So David came and bought something for his brothers, and he was like, "Who is this? Who is this talking about Goliath? This uncircumcised person. Who is this talking? Why don't you go, take care of him, kill him, And they were like, oh. David's like, "I'll do it." They're like, "No, you're too young. You're too young. You're not, he wasn't a man of war at that time. He was too young, you know." But he said, "No, I'll do it." So finally Saul gave him permission. And all he had was a sling and a rock, you know. And he hit him with it. And Goliath fell down. And he took Goliath's sword and chopped his head off. How did he do all that? Skinny kid probably, right? You know. But he had God's protection on him. He knew God would protect him. God will let him prevail. How many giants have we faced? Have I faced in my life? You know, doesn't have to be a person, a giant, a financial giant, an emotional giant, a sickness giant. You know, in 2009, I had cancer. I had testicular cancer. I wasn't saved then, but it was a rough period of my life, of course. You know, the cancer, of course, is rough anybody. And I remember being in the hospital. I was in the hospital for a couple of weeks when I found out. And my uncle came to visit me, and my uncle was a born-again Christian, you know, for many years at the time. And I remember he brought in a radio so we could listen to the Met games. So I could listen to the Met games while in the hospital. And it was a pastor. It wound up being a pastor that was next to me. He was just in there for whatever reason. I don't remember. And my uncle started talking to him, and, you know, I remember he had some family there, and they all stood around and prayed for me. And I thought it was touching. I thought it was weird because I don't like being the center of attention. Never do. And I believe now, years later, you know, after I got saved, I believe now it's through that, through God, who brought me through that. Who brought me through that whole situation. When I first got diagnosed, I remember the doctor saying, you know, if you didn't come in the hospital within the next month, you'd probably be dead. And only by the grace of God, I believe that. Only by the grace of God. And I'm here today. He kept me here. You know, I wanna be like David. To me, I want to be like David. I want to be, you know, hey, there's Joe. You know, a guy after my own heart. God saying that about me. That's a wonderful thing. And through his son Jesus, who died on the cross for all of us. You know, that's very possible. Very possible. One day at a time. So God bless you guys. Hope everybody has a good day today. And God bless.